Hey everybody, welcome back. It's time for another audio drama lesson. I hope you're looking forward to this week. I certainly am. This week, it's time to dive into the tool we're going to use to bring our audio play to life. A script. Now, have you seen a script before? It's one of the actor's most important tools. It gives us the words that we're going to use to tell our story. In today's lesson, first we'll break down the parts of a script so that we know what we're looking at, and then we're going to talk about how to read the script, infusing it with character. And last, I'll give you a little assignment on how to choose your own script so that you can get to work on recording your very own audio drama. Let's get started. Now first, let's examine the different parts of a script. Here on the screen is an example of a page from one. Here you can see all the different parts of a script. Now, reading a script is very different from reading a book. In most books, the words are arranged in the same way, more or less sentence to sentence and paragraph to paragraph. But this looks quite different. Now, what you're looking at now is a specific script format that I use for writing audio dramas or radio plays. Let's break down the parts now. At the top of the page here, we have the scene heading. Many plays, screenplays, that's what we call movie scripts, or audio plays use scenes to break down the action into separate chunks. Changes in scene usually mean that the action is moved to another place or another time. But there's almost always a change of some kind when there is a scene change. And as actors, we need to think about those changes and how they'll affect our characters. Next up are the technical directions. Now, if you're familiar with stage plays, these are also known sometimes as stage directions. But because we're working on an audio production, they're often less to do with the movement of the characters or what's happening on stage. We can't see those things with our ears, so we have to describe them in other ways. Here in an audio script, these technical directions give us an idea of what sounds might be happening alongside our characters speaking, or what music might be going on to give the scene a certain mood. They might also tell us if a voice needs to be altered in some way, such as being very far away or very quiet, or sounding like it's coming through a telephone speaker. While we won't read these directions aloud when performing, they are very important to help us understand what's going on around our words. Now, it's finally time for one of our characters to speak. As you can see, in this format, the character's name is separated off to the left of the page and is followed by a colon. Anything after the colon is what a character is going to say aloud. Well, almost anything. You see this little word here in parentheses? When a character's speech is interrupted by a direction of some sort, that direction is placed in parentheses so that we know it's not intended to be read out loud. Here, for example, we wouldn't say pause when we come to the instruction. We would simply pause. Now, maybe you've noticed this word here by now. Dialogue. Dialogue comes from two words meaning to and speech. That means when we're talking about dialogue, we're talking about two or more people engaged in a conversation. Sometimes only one character speaks for an extended amount of time. Can you guess what that might be called? That's right, it's a monologue, because mono means one. You can see here that the technical directions can also interrupt a character's dialogue. Maybe it's a sound like a sudden car crash or a distant explosion. But when a character continues speaking, their name usually won't be listed again. The script will just pick right back up with their dialogue. Now, last, we have another character who comes in to speak their lines. We refer to lines of dialogue, simply meaning the lines of words on a page that a character says. You'll often hear actors talking about memorizing or rehearsing their lines. Lucky for us, in a recorded audio production, no memorization is needed. We'll be reading our lines right off the script as we record. Now that we've broken down the parts of a script, let's look at one that's already been written. This is the beginning of the script from The War of the Worlds, a radio play written and performed in 1938 based on a famous book by H.G. Wells. There's also a recent recreation of this script that I had the opportunity to produce. I'll leave a link in the description for this video in case you'd like to see what it's like. Now here we can see that our play starts with an announcer. You can see his dialogue right here. Next, we have a technical direction showing us that the theme music plays, and then a lengthy monologue here by Orson Welles, who introduces the story, and then another line by the announcer, some more music, and then a different announcer, that's a different character, and so on. Now that we've broken down the parts of a script, let's talk about how we can read the script as actors. Nobody wants to hear a monotone reading, especially when there's no pictures or actions to look at. We have to rely completely on our voice tools this time. Now, for an example of how we can do this, let's go back to that War of the Worlds script. Here we'll be looking at the character called Phillips. As actors, the first thing we can ask is, what do we know about our character? Well, in this case, we know that Phillips is a news reporter. He's been sent to investigate something strange that landed in a local field. He's surrounded by other people who are also anxious to find out what's going on. All of these things start to give us a picture of the character, and therefore the voice that we're going to create. Now next, before we start our read, let's take a look at the script. Maybe there are some clues in Philip's dialogue that tell us more about how he's feeling. And this will help us shape the voice more convincingly. Let's look right here at the first line. Philip says this is the most terrifying thing he's ever seen. Sometimes our characters come right out and tell us what they're feeling, even without us having to guess. Phillips is seeing something that scares him. We can also see that he's excited or anxious. Look at all the exclamation points. Learning to watch carefully for punctuation is also extremely important for actors. Look at this line here. I can hardly force myself to look at it. Can you imagine what Phillips must be feeling? Looking for keywords in dialogue is a great way to prepare ourselves to create a role for our audience. Now finally, think about those things for a moment. Try to think of a time when you, yourself, were in a stressful situation where maybe you didn't know exactly what was going on. Maybe you were even a little bit scared. Can you remember a time when you felt like that? Take just a moment. Think back on those circumstances. Try to remember everything that you can about it. Use those senses that we've talked so much about. What did things look like in that situation? What did they sound like? What were you seeing and hearing and smelling? All of those things. Recreate that moment for yourself as best you can. You remember? Try to hold on to those feelings as we read Philip's lines. This is a technique that we call emotional recall, using our own memories of our own personal feelings to convince an audience that our character is feeling the same things. All right, so now we've determined what we know about our character and who they are. We've looked at the script and we've gotten clues about what they're feeling, and then we've used our own emotional memory to access those same types of feelings. Now it's time for us to read these lines in character. Now I want you to pause the video right now and give it a try. Don't worry about being perfect. Just experiment with using your voice to create a sense of what Phillips is going through as he says these words. If you can, make a recording of yourself reading the lines and then listen to it and see if you can hear the emotion in your voice the way you want to. And then when you come back, I'll give you my reading and we'll see how they compare. Are you back? How did you do? Okay, I'm going to do my reading for you now, but I want you to remember that if what I do is different from what you did, both are okay. Every actor brings a little bit of themselves to every role. That's what makes the experience so exciting for both the performer and the audience. Like fingerprints, every performance is unique. So, here's my unique reading of the role. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Something's crawling out of the hollow top. Something. I can see peering out of that black hole, two luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be... Good heavens. Something's wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. Now, it's another one and another. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body. It's large as a bear, and it glistens like wet leather. But that face, ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. The monster, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's raising up. The crowd falls back now. They've seen plenty. This is the most extraordinary experience. I can't find words. I'll pull this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you, please? I'll be right back in a minute. What did you think? Were our readings very much the same, or were they very different? Remember, both options are fine. What's important for you is to keep reading and experimenting until you find a reading that you feel is emotionally convincing for the character you're portraying. Okay, it's time now to wrap it up by giving you an assignment for this week. So this week, I want you to find an audio drama script and practice reading it. If you like, you can even write something your own if you feel like doing it. You can certainly give it a try. But if you don't want to do that, I posted a list of links in the video description to help you track something down. Just read through the script that you choose. Try to identify the emotions of the characters that you're reading about. Use your emotional recall to try and access a time when you felt those same or similar kinds of emotions. And then, read aloud, trying different voices for different characters and attempting to infuse them with those emotions that you identified. You can play all the characters yourself, or you could get someone else to read along with you and divide up the roles. However you choose to do it, remember to be relaxed, to breathe, and above all, have fun. Next week, we'll talk about the process of recording our audio plays. I hope you'll join me again for that lesson. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and most important, stay creative.